Chapter 11. Danger Threatened. On being ushered into the royal apartment, Guy was led up to the king, who was seated in a large armchair. He was stroking the head of a greyhound, and two or three other dogs lay at his feet. Except two attendants who stood a short distance behind his chair, no one else was present. The king was pale and fragile looking. There was an expression of weariness on his face, for in the intervals between his mad fits he had but little rest. He was naturally a kind-hearted man, and the troubles that reigned in France, the constant contention among the great lords, and even among the members of his own family, was a constant source of distress to him. Between the Duke of Burgundy, the Queen, his nephew of Orleans, and the other royal dukes, he had no peace, and the sense of his inability to remedy matters, and of his position of tutelage in the hands of whoever chanced for the moment to be in the ascendant, in no slight degree contributed to the terrible attacks to which he was subject. At the present moment the Duke of Burgundy was away, and therefore, feeling now comparatively free, he looked up with interest when the usher announced Guy Aylmer. "You are young indeed, sir," he said as Guy made a deep bow, "to be the hero of the story that I heard this morning. I hear that you have been slaying many of the good citizens of Paris." "Some have certainly been slain, sir, but I think not that any of them could be considered as good citizens, being engaged as they were in attacking the house of the worshipful provost of the silversmiths, Maître Leroux." "I know him," the king said, "and have bought many rare articles of his handiwork, and more than once, when I have needed it, have had monies from him on usance. 'Tis a grave scandal that so good a citizen should thus be attacked in my city, but I will see that such doings shall not take place again. And now I would hear from your own lips how you and a few men defended the house so long, and, as I hear, with very heavy loss to those attacking it. I am told that you are English." "Yes, sire, I have the honour to be an esquire to Sir Eustace de Villeroy, and am here in attendance upon his dame, who with her two children have been brought as hostages to Paris under your royal order." A look of pain passed across the king's face. "Your lord is our vassal for his castle at Villeroy?" "He is, sire, and is also a vassal of England for the estates of his wife." "Since England and France are not at present on ill terms," the king said, "he may well discharge both duties without treason to either Henry or myself, but they told me that his vassalage to me has sat but lightly upon him." "His father and grandfather, sire, were vassals to England as Villeroy was then within the English bounds, but he is, I am assured, ready faithfully to render any service that your majesty might demand of him, and is willing to submit himself in all respects to your will, but since he wishes not to take any part in the troubles between the princes, it seems that both regard him with hostility. 2 months since his castle was attacked by some 8,000 men from Ham, led by Sir Clugnet de Brabant. These he repulsed with heavy loss, and deemed that in so doing he was acting in accordance with your majesty's proclamation, and was rendering faithful service to you in holding the castle against your enemies, and he had hoped for your majesty's approbation. He was then deeply grieved when your royal herald summoned him in your name either to receive a garrison or to send his wife and children hither as hostages." "I will see into the matter," the king said earnestly. "And so your mistress was bestowed at the house of Maître Leroux?" "She was, sire, and is most hospitably entertained by him." "Now let us hear of this defence. Tell me all that took place, withhold nothing." Guy related the details of the defence. "Truly it was well done, young sir, and I certainly owe you thanks for having given so shrewd a lesson to these brawlers. Maître Leroux has good reasons for being thankful to the duke for lodging your lady in his house, for he would doubtless have lost his life had you and your 4 men not been there. When the Duke of Burgundy returns I will take counsel with him touching this matter of your mistress. I know that he gave me good reasons at the time for the bringing of her hither, but in the press of matters I do not recall what they were. At any rate, as she is here as my hostage, her safety must be ensured, and for the present I will give orders that a guard be placed at the door." He extended his hand to Guy, who went on one knee to kiss it and then retired. He took the news back to Dame Margaret. "I knew well enough that the poor king had nothing to do with the matter," she said. "Were it otherwise I would myself have asked for an audience with him, but I knew that it would be useless. He would but have replied to me as he has to you, that he must consult the duke." In the afternoon the Italian called with his daughter upon Dame Margaret. The former was now dressed in accordance with his rank as an Italian noble, and the girl, on laying aside her cloak, was also in the costume of a young lady of position. Guy presented the count to his mistress. "I am greatly indebted to you, Count Montepone," she said, "for the timely warning that you sent us, and still more for the service rendered to us by your daughter in summoning the Burgundian knights to our aid. Truly," she added with a smile, "it is difficult to believe that it was this young lady who was so busy on our behalf." "I thank you, maiden, most heartily, and believe me, should the time ever come when you require a friend, which I hope may never be the case, you will find one in me on whom you can confidently rely. And this is my daughter Agnes. She is, methinks, but a year or so younger than yourself, though she is as tall or taller, and she will gladly be your friend also." Katarina replied quietly and composedly, and Guy, as he watched her and Agnes talking together, was surprised at the way in which she adapted herself to circumstances. As a boy she assumed the character so perfectly that no one would suspect her of being aught else. She was a French gamin, with all the shrewdness, impudence, and self-confidence of the class. As he saw her at her father's in female attire, something of the boy's nature seemed still to influence her. There was still a touch of sauciness in her manner, and something of defiance, as if she resented his knowledge of her in her other character. Now she had the quiet composure of a young lady of rank. As Dame Margaret had said, she was but little older than Agnes, but though less tall than the English girl, she looked a woman beside her. Guy stood talking with them while Dame Margaret and the count conversed apart. Gradually, as they chatted, Katarina's manner, which had at first been somewhat stiff, thawed, and Guy left her and Agnes together and went to look through the window. He could vaguely understand that Katarina at first, knowing that Dame Margaret and Agnes must be aware of her going about as a boy, was standing a little on her dignity. The simple straightforwardness of Agnes and her admiration of the other's boldness and cleverness had disarmed Katarina, and it was not long before they were chatting and laughing in girlish fashion. There was a difference in their laughter, the result of the dissimilar lives they had led. One had ever been a happy, careless child, allowed to roam about in the castle or beyond it almost unattended, and had only to hold herself as become the position of a maiden of rank in special occasions, as when guests were staying in the castle. The other had been for years her father's assistant, engaged in work requiring shrewdness and quickness, and not unattended at times with danger. She had been brought into contact with persons of all ranks and conditions, and at times almost forgot her own identity, and was in thought as well as manner the quick-witted messenger of her father. After the latter had chatted for some time with Dame Margaret, he beckoned her to him. "Dame Margaret had promised me to be your protector should aught befall me, child," he said, "and I charge you now in her hearing, should anything happen to me, to go at once to her castle at Villeroy, and should she not be there, to her castle at Summerley, which lies but 12 miles from the English port of Southampton, and there to place yourself under her guardianship, and to submit yourself to her will and guidance wholly and entirely. It would be well indeed for you to have a quiet English home after our troubled life. To Italy you cannot go, our estates are long since confiscated, and did you return there you would find powerful enemies and but lukewarm friends. Besides, there would be but one mode of life open to you, namely, to enter a convent, which would, methinks, be of all others the least suited to your inclinations." "I can promise you a hearty welcome," Dame Margaret said kindly. "I trust that you may never apply for it, but should, as your father says, aught happen to him, come to me fearlessly, and be assured that you will be treated as one of my own family. We shall ever be mindful of the fact that you saved our lives last night, and that nothing that we can do for you will cancel that obligation." "I trust that I may never be called upon to ask your hospitality, Lady Margaret," the girl said quietly, "but I thank you with all my heart for proffering it, and I feel assured that I should find a happy home in England." "'Tis strange how it has all come about," her father said. "'Tis scarce a month since I saw Dame Margaret enter Paris with her children, and the thought occurred to me that it would be well indeed for you were you in the charge of such a lady. Then, as if in answer to my thoughts, I saw her young esquire in the crowd listening to me, and was moved at once to say words that would induce him to call upon me afterwards, when I saw that I might possibly, in these troublous times, be of use to his mistress. And thus in but a short time what was at first but a passing thought has been realized. It is true that there are among my clients those whose protection I could obtain for you, but France is at present as much torn by factions as is our native Italy, and none can say but however highly placed and powerful a man may be today, he might be in disgrace tomorrow." Carefully wrapping his daughter up in her cloak again, the Italian took his leave, refusing the offer of Dame Margaret for two of her men at arms to accompany them. "There is no fear of trouble of any sort today," he said. "The loss that was suffered last night was so severe that the people will be quiet for a few days, especially as the king, as well as the city authorities, are evidently determined to put a stop to rioting. Moreover, the fact that the Burgundian nobles have, now that the duke is away, taken a strong part against the butchers' faction, has for the moment completely cowed them. But apart from this, it is my special desire to return to my house unnoticed. It is seldom that I am seen going in and out, for I leave home as a rule before my neighbours are about, and do not return till after nightfall. I make no secret of my being a vendor of drugs at the fairs, and there are few can suspect that I have visitors after dark." "I like your astrologer, Guy," Dame Margaret said when they had left. "Before I saw him I own that I had no great faith in his countship. Any man away from his native country can assume a title without anyone questioning his right to use it, so long as he is content to live in obscurity, and to abstain from attracting the attention of those who would be likely to make inquiries. But I have no doubt that our friend is, as he represents himself, the Count of Montepone, and I believe him to be sincere in the matter of his dealings with us. He tells me that he has received more than one hint that the reports that he deals with the stars and exercises divinations have come to the ears of the church, and it is likely ere long that he may be forced to leave Paris, and indeed that he would have done so before now, had it not been that some of those who have had dealings with him have exercised their influence to prevent things being pushed farther. No doubt it is true that, as he asserts, he in no way dabbles in what is called black art, but confines himself to reading the stars, and he owned to me that the success he has obtained in this way is to some extent based upon the information that he obtains from persons of all classes. He is evidently a man whose nature it is to conspire, not so much for the sake of any prospect of gain or advantage, but for the pleasure of conspiring. He has dealings with men of both factions. Among the butchers he is believed to be an agent of the duke, who has assumed the character of a vendor of nostrum simply as a disguise, while among the Armagnacs he is regarded as an agent of Orleans. It is doubtless a dangerous game to play, but both helps him in his profession of astrologer, and gives him influence and power. I asked him why he thus mingled in public affairs. He smiled and said, 'We are always conspiring in Italy, we all belong to factions. I have been brought up in an atmosphere of conspiracy, and it is so natural to me that I could scarce live without. I am rich, men who trade upon the credulity of fools have plenty of clients. My business of a quack doctor brings me in an income that many a poor noble would envy. I travel when I like. I visit alternately all the great towns of France, though Paris has always been my headquarters. As an astrologer I have a wide reputation. The name of the Count Smarondi, for it is under that title that I practise, is known throughout France, though few know me personally or where I am to be found. Those who desire to consult me can only obtain access to me through some of those whose fortunes I have rightly foretold, and who have absolute faith in me, and even these must first obtain my consent before introducing anyone to me. All this mystery adds both to my reputation and to my fees. Could anyone knock at my door and ask me to calculate his horoscope, he would prize it but little, when it is so difficult to obtain an introduction to me, and it is regarded as a matter of favour to be allowed to consult me. People are ready to pay extravagant sums for my advice, and," he said with a smile, "the fact that 10 days or a fortnight always elapses between the time I am asked to receive a new client and his or her first interview with me, enables me to make such minute inquiries that I can not only gain their complete confidence by my knowledge of certain events in their past, but it will aid me in my divination of their future. I believe in the stars, madam, wholly and implicitly, but the knowledge to be gained from them is general and not particular. But with that general knowledge, and with what I know of men's personal character and habits, of their connections, and of their political schemes and personal ambitions, I am able in the majority of cases so to supplement the knowledge I gain from the stars as to trace their future with an accuracy that seems to them astonishing indeed. For example, madam, had I read in the stars that a dire misfortune impended over you last night, and had I learned that there was a talk among the butchers that the provost of the silversmiths was a strong opponent of theirs, and that steps would shortly be taken to show the Parisians the danger of opposing them, it would have needed no great foresight on my part to tell you that you were threatened with a great danger, and that the danger would probably take the form of an attack by the rabble on the house you occupied. I should naturally put it less plainly. I should tell you to beware of this state, should warn you that I saw threatening faces and raised weapons, and that the sounds of angry shouts demanding blood were in my ears. Any astrologer, madam, who works by proper methods, can, from the conjunction of the stars at anyone's birth, calculate whether their aspect will be favourable or unfavourable at any given time, and may foretell danger or death. But it needs a knowledge of human nature, a knowledge of character and habits, and a knowledge of the questioner's surroundings, to be able to go much farther than this. That I have had marvellous successes, and my counsels are eagerly sought, depends then upon the fact that I leave nothing to chance, but that while enveloping myself in a certain amount of mystery, I have a police of my own, consisting of men of all stations. Many, indeed most of them, do not know me even by sight. They have no idea of the object of my inquiries, and indeed believe that their paymaster is the head of the secret police, or the agent of some powerful minister. You see, Guy, the Count spoke with perfect frankness to me. His object naturally was to gain my confidence by showing himself as he is, and to explain why he wished to secure a home for his daughter. He took up his strange profession in the first place as a means of obtaining his living, and perhaps to secure himself from the search of private enemies who would have had him assassinated could he have been found. But he follows it now from his love for an atmosphere of intrigue, and for the power it gives him, because, as he told me, he has already amassed a considerable fortune, and could well retire and live in luxury did he choose. He said frankly that if he did not so interest himself, his existence would be simply intolerable to him. "I may take my daughter to England," he said. "I may stay there until I see her established in life, but when I had done so I should have to return here. Paris is always the centre of intrigues. I would rather live on a crust here than be a prince elsewhere." He certainly succeeded in convincing me wholly of his sincerity, as far as we are concerned. Devoted to intrigue himself, he would fain that his daughter should live her life in peace and tranquillity, and that the money for which he has no use himself should be enjoyed by her. "I have lost my rank," he said, "forfeited it, if you will, but she is the Countess Katarina of Montepone, and I should like to know that she and my descendants after her should live the life that my ancestors lived. It is a weakness, a folly, I know, but we have all our weaknesses and our follies. At any rate, I see that that fancy could well be carried out in France or in Italy, but it may be in England. At any rate, after all he has told me, I feel that he has it in his power to be a very useful friend and ally to us here. I am convinced that he is truly desirous of being so." And how did you like the girl, Agnes?" she said, raising her voice. Agnes had fetched Charlie in, and they were looking together down into the street while their mother was talking to Guy. "I hardly know, mother. She seems to be so much older than I am. Sometimes when she talked and laughed I thought I liked her very much, and then a minute later it seemed to me that I did not understand her one bit. But I do think that she would be very nice when one came to know her thoroughly." "She has lived so different a life to yourself, Agnes, that it is no wonder that you should feel at first that you have nothing in common with her. That she is very clever I have no doubt, and that she is brave and fearless we know. Can you tell us anything more, Guy?" "Not very much more, Lady Margaret. I should say that she was very true and loyal. I think that at present she enters into what she has to do in something of the same spirit as her father, and that she thoroughly likes it. I think that she is naturally full of fun and has high spirits, and that she enjoys performing these missions with which she is entrusted as a child enjoys a game, and that the fact that there is a certain amount of danger connected with them is in itself attractive to her. I am glad that you have told me what he said to you about himself, for I could not understand him before. I think I can now, and understanding him one can understand his daughter." At 8 o'clock all retired to bed. They had had little sleep the night before, and the day had been full of events. Guy's last thought was that he was sorry for the king, who seemed to wish to do what was right, but who was a mere puppet in the hands of Burgundy or Queen Isabel, to be used as a lay figure when required by whichever had a temporary ascendancy. For the next fortnight Guy worked hard in the salle des armes, being one of the first to arrive and the last to depart, and after taking a lesson from one or other of the masters, he spent the rest of the morning in practising with anyone who desired an adversary. Well trained as he was in English methods of fighting, he mastered with a quickness that surprised his teachers the various thrusts and parries that were new to him. At the end of that time he was able to hold his own with the young Count d'Estournel, who was regarded as an excellent swordsman. The attendance of the Burgundian nobles had now fallen off a good deal. The Armagnac army had approached Paris, St. Denis had opened its gates to them, and there were frequent skirmishes near the walls of Paris between parties of their knights and the Burgundians. Paris was just at present more quiet. Burgundy was still absent, and the future seemed so uncertain that both factions in the city held their hands for a time. The news that a reconciliation between Orleans and Burgundy had been fully effected, and that the great lords would soon enter Paris together, was received with a joy that was modified by recollections of the past. Burgundy and Orleans had once before sworn a solemn friendship, and yet a week or two later Orleans lay dead in the streets of Paris, murdered by the order of Burgundy. Was it likely that the present patching up of the quarrel would have a much longer duration? On the former occasion the quarrel was a personal one between the two great houses. Now all France was divided. A vast amount of blood had been shed, there had been cruel massacres, executions, and wrongs, and the men of one faction had come to hate those of the other, and although neither party had dared to put itself in the wrong by refusing to listen to the mediators, it was certain that the reconciliation was a farce, and that it was but a short truce rather than a peace that had been concluded. Nevertheless, Paris rejoiced outwardly, and hailed with enthusiasm the entry of the Queen, the Dukes of Aquitaine, Burgundy, Berri, and Bourbon. The Duke of Aquitaine was now acting as regent, though without the title, for the king was again insane. He had married Burgundy's daughter, but it was rumoured that he was by no means disposed to submit himself blindly to the advice of her father. The only effect of the truce between the parties was to add to the power of the Burgundian faction in Paris, but few of the Armagnac party cared to trust themselves in the city that had shown itself so hostile. Most of them retired to their estates, and the great procession that entered the town had been for the most part composed of adherents of Burgundy. 3 days after their arrival in the town, Guy, on leaving the salle d'armes, found Katarina in her boy's attire waiting for him at the corner of the street. "My father would speak with you, Master Guy," she said shyly, for in the past 2 months she had always been in a girl's dress when he had met her. "Pray go at once," she said. "I will not accompany you, for I have other matters to attend to." "Things are not going well," the count said when Guy entered the room. "The Orleanists are discouraged and the butchers triumphant. At a meeting last night they determined that a body of them should wait upon the Dukes of Aquitaine and Burgundy to complain of the conduct of the knights who fell upon them when attacking the silversmiths, and demand, in the name of Paris, their execution." "They would never dare do that!" Guy exclaimed indignantly. "They will assuredly do it, and I see not how they can be refused. The duke has no force that could oppose the Parisians. They might defend the Louvre and one or two of the strongly fortified houses, but the butchers would surround them with 20,000 men. Burgundy's vassals might come to his assistance, but the gates of Paris would be closed, and it would need nothing short of an army and a long siege before they could enter Paris. When they had done so they might punish the leaders, but Burgundy would thereby lose for ever the support of the city, which is all important to him. Therefore, if you would save your friends, you must warn them that it will be necessary for them to make their way out of Paris as quickly and as quietly as may be. In the next place, and principally, you yourself will assuredly be murdered. There was a talk of the meeting demanding your execution and that of your 4 men, but it was decided that there was no need to do this, as you could all be killed without trouble, and that possibly the Duke of Aquitaine might refuse on the ground that, as your lady had come here under safe conduct as a royal hostage, you were entitled to protection, and it would be contrary to his honour to give you up. There are others who have displeased the Parisians, whose lives they will also demand, and there are several women among them. Therefore it is clear that even the sex of your lady will not save her and her children from the fury and longing for revenge felt by the family of Legault and by Caboche the Skinner. The only question is, where can they be bestowed in safety? I know what you would say, that all this is monstrous, and that it is incredible that the Parisians will dare to take such steps. I can assure you that it is as I say, the peril is most imminent. Probably tonight, but if not tomorrow, the gates of Paris will be closed, and there will be no escape for any whom these people have doomed to death. In the first place, you have to warn your Burgundian friends. That done, you must see to the safety of your 4 men. The three Frenchmen may, if they disguise themselves, perchance be able to hide in Paris, but your tall archer must leave the city without delay. His height and his appearance would betray him in whatever disguise he were clad. Now, as to your lady and the children, remain where they are they cannot. Doubtless, were she to appeal to the Duke of Burgundy for protection, he would place her in the Louvre, or in one of the other castles, that is, if she could persuade him of the intentions of the Parisians, which indeed it would be difficult for her to do. But even could she do so, she would not be safe, for if he is forced to surrender some of his own knights and ladies of the court to these miscreants, he could not refuse to hand over Lady Margaret. They might, it is true, possibly escape from Paris in disguise, but I know that there is already a watch set at the gates. The only resource that I can see is that she should, with her children, come hither for a time. This is but a poor place for her, but I think that if anywhere she might be safe with me. No one knows that I have had any dealings whatever with you, and no one connects me in any way with politics. What should a vendor of nostrums have to do with such affairs? Thus, then, they might remain here without their presence being in the slightest degree suspected. At any rate, I have as good means as any for learning what is being done at their councils, and should receive the earliest information were it decided that a search should be made here, and should this be done, which I think is most unlikely, I shall have time to remove them to some other place of concealment. Lastly, as to yourself, I take it that nothing would induce you to fly with your Burgundian friends while your lady is in hiding in Paris?" "Assuredly not," Guy said. "My lord appointed me to take charge of her and watch over her, and as long as I have life I will do so." "You will not be able to aid her, and your presence may even add to her danger. Still, I will not say that your resolution is not honourable and right. But at least you must not stay here, for your detection would almost certainly lead to hers. You, however, can be disguised. I can darken your skin and hair, and in some soiled garb you might hope to pass without recognition. Where to bestow you I will talk over with my daughter. As soon as it becomes dusk this evening she will present herself at the house door of Maître Leroux. She will bring with her disguises for your lady, the children, and yourself. I have many of them here, and as soon as it is quite dark she will guide here Dame Margaret with her daughter and son. You had best not sally out with them, but can follow a minute or two later and join them as soon as they turn down a side street. As to the men, you must arrange with them what they had best do. My advice is that they should this afternoon saunter out as if merely going for a walk. They ought to go separately. You can decide what they had best do when outside." Chapter 12. In hiding. The news of this terrible danger was so wholly unexpected that Guy for a moment felt almost paralyzed. "It seems almost incredible that such wickedness could take place," he exclaimed. "My information is certain," the count replied. "I do not say that I think your Burgundian friends are in so much danger as some of those of the king's party, as Burgundy's influence with these Parisians goes for something. Still, he might not be able to save them if they waited till the demand was made, although he might warn them if he learned that they were to be among those demanded." "Does the duke then know what is intended?" The count smiled. "We know what followed the last reconciliation," he said, "and can guess pretty shrewdly at what will happen now. Then the duke murdered Orleans. Now he may take measures against the supporters of the present duke. It was certain that the struggle would begin again as soon as the kiss of peace had been exchanged. Last time he boldly avowed his share in the murder. This time, most conveniently for him, the Parisians are ready and eager to do his work for him. Dismiss from your mind all doubt. You can rely upon everything that I have told you as being true. Whether you can convince these young knights is a matter that concerns me not, but remember that if you fail to convince your mistress, her life and those of her children are forfeited, and that, as far as I can see, her only hope of safety is in taking refuge here." "I thank you with all my heart," Guy said, "and will now set about carrying out your advice. First I will return to my lady and consult with her, and see what we had best do with the men. As to Count Charles d'Estournel and his friends, I will see them as soon as I have arranged the other matter. Their case is not so pressing, for at least when once beyond the gates they will be safe. I will see that my lady and the children shall be ready to accompany your daughter when she comes for them." "Look well up and down the street before you sally out," the count said. "See that there are but few people about. It is a matter of life and death that no one who knows you shall see you leave this place." Guy followed his advice and waited until there was no one within 50 yards of the door. Then he went out, crossed the street, took the first turning he came to, and then made his way back to the silversmith's as fast as he could. "What ails you, Guy?" Dame Margaret said as he entered the room. "You look sorely disturbed, and as pale as you received some injury." "Would that that were all, my lady. I have had news from the Count of Montepone of so strange and grave a nature that I would not tell you it were it not that he is so much in earnest, and so well convinced of its truth, that I cannot doubt it." Guy then related what the count had told him, and repeated the offer of shelter he had made. "That is indeed beyond all bounds," she said. "What, is it credible that the Duke of Burgundy and the king's son, the Duke of Aquitaine, could hand over to this murderous mob of Paris noble gentlemen and ladies?" "As to Burgundy, madam, it seems to me, from what the count said, that he himself is at the bottom of the affair, though he may not know that the Parisians demand the lives of some of his own knights as well as those of his opponents. As he did not of old hesitate to murder Orleans, the king's own brother, we need credit him with no scruples as to how he would rid himself of others he considers to stand in his way. As to Aquitaine, he is a young man and powerless. There are no Orleanist nobles in the town to whom he might look for aid, and if a king's brother was slain, why not a king's son? It seems to me that he is powerless." "That may be, but I cannot consent to what the count proposes. What, disguise myself and hide from this base mob of Paris? It would be an unworthy action." "It is one that I knew you would shrink from, madam, but pardon me for saying that it is not your own life only, but those of your children that are at stake. When royal princes and dukes are unable to oppose these scoundrel Parisians, women and children may well bend before the storm." Dame Margaret sat for a time with knitted brows. At last she said, "If it must be, Guy, it must. It goes sorely against the grain, but for the sake of the children I will demean myself and will take your advice. Now you had best summon the 4 men at arms and talk over their case with them." Guy went upstairs and fetched the 4 men down. "We have sure news, my friends," Dame Margaret said calmly, "that tonight we and many others will be seized by the mob and slain." An exclamation of rage broke from the 4 men. "There will be many others slain before that comes about," Long Tom said. "That I doubt not, Tom, but the end would be the same. An offer of refuge has been made to me and the children, and for their sake, unwilling as I am to hide myself from this base mob, I have brought myself to accept it. My brave esquire will stay in Paris in disguise and do what may be to protect us. I have now called you to talk about yourselves. The gates will speedily be guarded and none allowed to sally out, therefore what is to be done must be done quickly." "We will all stay and share your fate, madam. You could not think that we should leave you," Robert Picard said, and the others murmured their agreement. "You would add to my danger without being able to benefit me," she said, "and my anxiety would be all the greater. No, you must obey my commands, which are that you forthwith quit Paris. Beyond that I must leave you to judge your own course. As French men at arms none would question you when you were once beyond the gate. You may find it difficult to travel in this disturbed time, but you are shrewd enough to make up some story that will account for your movements, and so may work your way back to Villeroy. The difficulty is greater in the case of your English comrade. His height and that light hair of his and ruddy face would mark him anywhere, and if he goes with you it would add to your danger, especially as his tongue would betray him as being English the first time he spoke. However, beyond ordering you to quit Paris, I must leave this matter in your hands and his, and he will doubtless take counsel with my esquire and see if any disguise can be contrived to suit him. I will see you again presently. You had best go with them, Guy, and talk the matter over." "This thing cannot be done, Master Guy," the archer said doggedly when they reached their apartments. "It is not in reason. What should I say when I got home and told them at Summerley that I saved my own skin and left our dear lady and the children to be murdered, while striking a blow on their behalf? The thing's beyond all reason, and I will maintain it to be so." "I can understand what you say, Tom, for I feel exactly as you do. The question is, how is the matter to be arranged?" Then he broke into French, which the archer by this time understood well enough, though he could speak it but poorly. "Tom is saying that he will not go, men," he said, "and I doubt not that you feel as he does. At the same time our lady's orders must be carried out in the first place, and you must leave Paris. But I say not that you need travel to any distance. On the contrary, I should say that, if it can be arranged, you must return here in a few days, having so changed your attire and aspect that there is no fear of your being recognized, and bestow yourself in some lodging where I may find you if there be need for your services." "That is what will be best, Master Guy," Robert Picard said. We have but to get steel caps of another fashion to pass well enough, and, if need be, we can alter the fashion of our hair. There are few here who have noticed us, and I consider that there is no chance whatever of our being recognized. There are plenty of men among the cutthroats here who have served for a while, and we can easily enough get up some tale that will pass muster for us three. That matter is simple enough. The question is, what are we to do with Tom? We cannot shorten his stature, nor give his tongue a French twist." "No, that is really the difficulty. We might dye that hair of his and darken his face, as I am going to do myself. There are tall men in France, and even his inches would not matter so much. The danger lies in his speech." "I would never open my mouth, Master Guy. If need were, I would sooner cut out my tongue with a dagger." "You might bleed to death in doing it, Tom. No, we must think of something better than that. You might perhaps pass as a Fleming, if we cannot devise any other disguise." "Leave that to me, Master Guy. I shall think of something. I will at any rate hide somewhere near Paris, and the lads here will let me know where they are to be found, and I shall not be long before I join them in some such guise as will pass muster. But it will be necessary that we should know where you will be, so that you can communicate with us." "Well, that I don't know myself yet, but I will be every evening in front of Notre Dame when the bell strikes 9, and one of you can meet me there and tell me where you are bestowed, so that I can always send for you in case of need. Now I think that you had better lose no time, for we know not at what hour a guard will be placed on the gate. You had better go out in pairs, as if merely going for a walk. If you are stopped, as may well happen, return here, but as you come purchase a length of strong rope, so that you may let yourselves down from the wall. Now that peace has been made, there will be but slight watch save at the gates, and you should have no difficulty in evading the sight of any who might be on guard." "That will be easy enough," Robert Picard said confidently. "We had best not come back here, for there may be a watch set upon the house, and they may follow us." "The only thing that troubles me," Tom said, "is that I must leave my bow behind me." "You can get another when you get back to Villeroy. There are spare ones there." Yes, but that is not the same thing, Master Guy. A man knows his own bow, and when he takes to a fresh one his shooting is spoilt until he gets to know it well. Every bow has its niceties. For rough shooting it makes but little matter, but when it comes to aiming at the slit of a knight's visor at 80 yards, one makes poor shooting with a strange bow. "Well, you must practise with your new one, that is all, Tom, and if you hide yours here it may be that you will be able to recover it before we start for Villeroy. You must leave your bundles behind. It would look suspicious if you were to attempt to take them with you. I should advise you to put on one suit over the other. It will not add greatly to your bulk. When you are ready to start, come below and our lady will say goodbye to you. Do not give her a hint that you are thinking of staying near Paris. If she asks any questions, say that you intend to disguise Tom, and he will travel with you." A few minutes later there was a tapping at Dame Margaret's door. Guy opened it, and the four men entered. "I wish you good fortunes, my friends," Dame Margaret said. "Here is a letter, Robert, that I have written to my lord, telling him that you have all served me faithfully and well, and that I commend you to him. I have told him that you are leaving me by my special orders, and that you would willingly have stopped and shared my danger, but that as I feel that force would avail nothing, and your presence might lead to the discovery of my hiding place, I bid you go. Here are 4 purses to pay the expenses of your journey, and of any disguises you may find it necessary to adopt. And now farewell. Tarry not an instant. My heart will be lighter when I know that you are beyond the walls." She held out her hand to them. Each in turn knelt and kissed it, the 3 Frenchmen in silence, but with tears running down their cheeks. Tom was the last, and said as he rose, "I am obeying your orders, Lady Margaret, but never before have I felt, as I feel now, that I am doing a mean and cowardly action. I would rather stay by your side, though I know I should be cut to pieces this very night, than leave you thus." "I doubt it not, Tom. I know well how your inclinations lie, and yet I feel that it is necessary that you should go. If the great nobles cannot withstand this cruel mob of Paris, the arm of a single man can avail nothing, and your presence would bring danger rather than safety to me." "I feel that, my lady. Did I not do so, I would not go even at your command. You are my liege lady, and I have a right to give my life for you, and would do it were it not that I see that, as you say, my staying here would bring danger upon you." As soon as they had gone, Dame Margaret said, "Now, Guy, I will detain you no longer. Hasten and warn your friends." Guy hurried away. He found that Count Charles was on the point of mounting to go for a ride with some of his friends. "Stay a moment, I beg of you, Count," Guy said as he hurried up.
I have a matter of most serious import to tell you."
"Wait, my friends," the young count said to Sir Pierre Estelle, Count Walter de Vesoul, and the Sieur Jean de Perron, who were already mounted. "I shall not detain you many minutes." "Well, what is it, friend Guy?" he asked as he entered his room. "I have come to warn you of a great danger, Count. This evening a mob of Parisians, I know not how numerous, but at least of great strength, will demand from Burgundy and the Duke of Aquitaine the surrender to them of you and the others who took part in defeating them the other night, besides other gentlemen, and, as I hear, ladies." "Pardieu! If it be so, the duke will give the impudent knaves their answer." 10,000 armed men are not apt to take an answer, Count. You know that many times already the Duke of Burgundy has been overborne by the leaders of these Parisians, and forced to do things that must have displeased him, as they displeased you all. Therefore I implore you to ride off while you may. Even now it is possible that the gates may be closed, but if so, they are not likely to be strongly guarded. It is evident that your going would at any rate save the duke from grave embarrassment." "Are you sure that this news is true?" the count asked. "Absolutely certain. If you would save yourself and your friends, I pray you to call upon them at once to mount and ride in a body to one of the gates. You may bid some of your retainers mount and follow you at a short distance, and if you find the gates closed and the fellows will not let you out, call them up and fight your way out. You can stay for tonight at Sèvres, and if you find in the morning that I have not spoken truly, you can return and upbraid me as you will. If, however, you find that strange events have happened here, then you had best ride away to Burgundy and stay there until you find that these villainous knaves here have been reduced to order, which methinks it will need an army to undertake." The count went to the window, opened it, and called his friends below to come up. "No, no," D'Estelle said, laughing. "If we once come up we shall stay there. If you cannot come now, join us at the Lion d'Or at Sèvres, where you will find us eating the dinner that we have sent on to order." "The matter is urgent," D'Estournel said. "I am not joking with you, but pray you to come up at once." Seeing that the matter was serious, the three knights dismounted and went up. They were at first absolutely incredulous when they heard from Count Charles what Guy had told them. "That the knaves owe us no goodwill I know well enough," Count Walter said, "for they have over and over again laid their complaint against us before the duke, but it is hard to believe that they would dare to demand what Burgundy would never grant." Guy repeated the arguments that he had used with D'Estournel. "There is no limit," Guy said, "to the arrogance of these knaves, and in truth it cannot be denied that they are masters here, and that even the duke cannot altogether withstand them, and you know, moreover, how essential is their goodwill to him. But even should he ever so obstinately refuse their demands, they might well take their way without his leave. What can he, with a handful of knights and a few hundred armed men, do against the mob of Paris? I earnestly pray you, gentlemen, to treat the matter as serious. Warn your 8 friends without delay, bid your retainers mount and ride to the gate. If it is open, all the better. It is but a party of pleasure bound for Sèvres, and if you learn tomorrow morning that all is quiet here, you can return. If it seems better to you, and this may save you much argument, merely ask your friends to mount and ride with you to dine there. If any refuse, say you have a motive that they will learn when they get there, and almost compel them to go with you. I pledge you my honour that you will have no reason to regret having taken my advice." "Well, what do you say, gentlemen?" Count Walter asked. "As Master Aylmer says, it will at worst be but a carouse, and which I hope he will share with us." "Oh, that I would right gladly do," Guy replied, "but I have the safety of my lady and her children to look after, for she too, as well as our 4 men at arms, have incurred the enmity of these butchers. I have sent the men out of the town, and a place of safety has been prepared for her and the children. I shall see them safely bestowed there at nightfall." "Since you have thought such preparations necessary, we will at any rate act on the information that you have given us, and will promise not to blame you unduly should it turn out that the affair you speak of does not come off. Let us lose no time, gentlemen. Let us each go to 2 of our friends, and take no denial from them in our invitation to dine with us at Sèvres. Let us say nothing to them about bringing their men at arms and grooms with them. We can ourselves muster some 30 fighting men, and that should be enough with our own swords to bring these knaves to reason if they keep their gates shut against us." "As my arrangements are all made," Guy said, "and I have an hour to spare, I shall walk down towards the gate and see what comes of it." The 4 gentlemen at once mounted and rode off, after giving directions to their grooms to order their men at arms to mount at once, and to wait for them at a spot a quarter of a mile from the gate, and Guy strolled off in the same direction. In half an hour he had the satisfaction of seeing the men-at-arms ride up and halt as ordered. Walking a little further on, he saw that something unusual had happened. Groups of people were standing about talking, and each man who came up from the gate was questioned. Joining one of the groups, he soon learned that the excitement was caused by the unusual closing of the gates, no one being allowed either to enter or pass out. None could account for this proceeding. It was certain that it had not been done by the orders either of the Dukes of Aquitaine or Burgundy, for there were no royal guards or men-at-arms with the Duke's cognizance, but by men of the city, who, as all agreed, must be acting under the orders of the butchers. "It is a bold deed," one said, "for which they will have to account. It is a usurpation of authority, and one the Duke of Aquitaine, who is now king in all but name, will surely resent hotly." "How strong is the party?" one of the bystanders asked, putting the question that Guy had on his lips. "Oh, some 40 or 50, all stout fellows with steel caps and breastpieces, and well armed." Guy turned and walked back to the spot where the Burgundian men-at-arms were drawn up. In 10 minutes D'Estournel and his party rode up. Guy was glad to see that he had with them the whole of his companions. He at once went up to them. "The gates are closed, Count, and held by 40 or 50 of the townsmen in arms, so you see that my information was correct. Had you not better tell your friends of the truth now, for otherwise they might hesitate to take so grave a step as to attack them?" D'Estournel nodded, and, riding to the others, said in a low voice, "Gentlemen, we had not intended to let you into this little mystery until we had left Paris, but I find it necessary to do so now. I have learned surely that the rabble of Paris have resolved upon massacring us tonight for the share we took in that little affair at the provost of the silversmiths. To that end they have shut the gates and hold it with some 50 armed men. It is as well that some of us have brought our men-at-arms here. I can hardly fancy that these rascals will try to prevent us from passing out, seeing that they have no warrant but their own for closing the gates against us, but if they do there is nothing for it but to open them ourselves. Let us ride forward at once, gentlemen, for these fellows may receive a reinforcement at any time." So saying, he put spurs to his horse, called upon the men-at-arms to follow. His 3 companions, who were already in the secret, joined him at once, and the others, after a pause of astonishment and almost incredulity, followed, in no way loath at this chance of another fight with the followers of the butchers. As they approached the gate, the townsman hastily drew up in front of it. "What means this?" Count Walter de Vesoul said haughtily, as he reined up his horse a few paces from the line. "By what authority do you dare close the gates and thus stand armed before them?" "By the authority of the city of Paris," the leader of the party said insolently. "I recognize no such authority while the king and the Duke of Aquitaine, who holds his full powers, are resident here. Clear the way, my man, and open the gates, or I will ride over you." The butcher answered him with a derisive glance. "It will cost you your lives if you attempt it," he said. "Gentlemen, draw your swords and give these rough fellows the lesson they need," and setting the example he rode at the butcher and cut him down. The idea that the Burgundian knights would venture to force a passage in the teeth of the prohibition of the master of the butchers had apparently not so much as entered the minds of the guard, and as soon as the knights and their followers fell upon them, the greater portion of them flung down their arms and fled, a few only fighting stoutly until overpowered. As soon as the skirmish was over, the keys were brought out from the guard room, and the gate unlocked and the massive bars taken down. In the meantime some of the men-at-arms had run up on to the wall, hoisted the portcullis, and lowered the drawbridge across the fosse. As soon as they returned and mounted, the party rode through. As they did so, 4 men ran out from a lane near the wall and followed them, and Guy at once recognized in them the archer and his 3 companions. Greatly pleased, he returned to the city and informed Dame Margaret of what had taken place. "No doubt," he said, "when they found the gate shut they remembered what I had said, that I was going to warn Count Charles and his friends, and went back to observe what these were doing, and the sight of their retainers going towards the wall must have told them which way they intended to leave, and they no doubt went down and hid up near the gate to watch the conflict, and to take advantage of it if a chance offered to get off themselves." "That is indeed a satisfaction, Guy, and I am glad too that your friends got away. There can be no doubt now that the count's information was accurate. The gates having been closed, as he said they would be, vouches for this. Katarina has been here. She was dressed this time as an apprentice in the service of some trader, and brought a large box containing our disguises and yours. For you there is a bottle of dye for your hair, a mixture for darkening your skin, and clothes. The latter as such would be worn by a workman. Charlie is to wear a girl's dress, at which he is mightily offended, nor is Agnes better pleased, for a boy's suit has been sent for her. My disguise is simply a long cloak with a hood, such as is worn by the wives of small traders. Katarina explained that it had been thought better to change the sex of Agnes and Charlie, so that when a hue and cry is raised for a missing woman with a girl of 14 and a boy of 10, no one should associate the woman with 2 lads and a little girl, whom they passed in the street, as being the party for which a search is being made. And now, Guy, do you not think that we should warn our good host of the danger that threatens, for doubtless he also has been marked out as a victim?" "I will see him at once, and will tell him as much as is necessary for him to know. Assuredly it is now too late for him to escape beyond the walls, unless he were to take his wife with him and bring his serving men to let them down from the walls, but this I should think he will not do. He would rather take refuge in the house of some of his friends." The silversmith listened gravely when Guy told him that he had received sure information that the butchers would that evening make a slaughter of some of their opponents, that they would be in such force that resistance would be hopeless, and that the few royal troops and the followers of Burgundy would be insufficient to make head against them. "Your news does not surprise me, and though I know not how you came by it, I fear that it is true. The news that the city gates have been all shut and are being guarded by strong parties of the butchers' rabble shows but too surely that there is danger in the air. In the first place, there is your lady to be thought of. I must endeavour to obtain for her also shelter among my friends." "We have already arranged for a hiding place for her and the children, Maître Leroux. I may not name where it is to anyone, but suffice that it is a quiet house, where there is little fear of any suspicions resting upon them, and where they will be able to remain until order is restored." "I fear that will be a long time," the silversmith said. "The butchers boast that they can place 20,000 men under arms, and indeed the terror excited by them is so great that very many who hate their doings as much as I do myself have been forced to make a semblance of joining them. Next, about your men at arms. They are brave fellows, and I owe them much." "They are all safe outside the walls. Some Burgundian knights, indignant that this rabble should dare stop them, cut their way out through the Porte Saint Denis, and our men took advantage of the gates being open to follow them." "And as to yourself, Master Aylmer?" "I have dyes to blacken my hair and a tincture for darkening my face. I have also a disguise by which I may pass as an apprentice to a trader. I shall at all hazards remain in Paris, but what I shall yet do I know not. And now about yourself and Madame Leroux. You will not, I hope, think of defending the house as you did before?" "Oh, certainly not. It would not avail to save our lives, and would assuredly cost those of my servitors and most likely of the women. I have friends who will, I hope, gladly take us in. Maître Le Pelletier, and the master carpenter, who has been doing my doors, is an old friend of mine, and after the last attack urged me to withdraw for a time from the attention of the mob, and offered me refuge in his place. He lives in the Rue des Fosses, which is close to the old inner wall that is now for the most part in ruins. You pass along by the hospital, and when beyond the old wall turn to the right, 'tis the third doorway. There are no houses facing it, but it looks straight upon the wall, the ground between being some 30 or 40 yards wide, and doubtless when the house was built it was before the present wall was erected, and stood on the outer side of the fosse round the old one. There are many others of the same trade who live in that quarter, and as they are for the most part opposed to the butchers, I doubt not that my friend will have no difficulty in obtaining a lodging for you among them, should no other have been settled upon." "Thank you indeed," Guy replied. "The arrangement has been made by others, and I know not for certain what has yet been decided upon, but should not a suitable place have been chosen I will gladly accept your offer." "And now I must set to work," the silversmith said. "In what way?" Guy asked in surprise. "In hiding my wares. In a city like Paris, with its sieges and its tumults, a prudent man having goods of great value will assuredly prepare a place of safety for them. I will set my men to work at once. The business must be finished before it becomes dark, for as soon as it does so we must leave the house and close it." "I have nothing to do at present, and shall be glad to help your men," Guy said. He followed the silversmith downstairs. Maître Leroux called his head man. "We must move, Jacques, and that quickly. You have heard that the gates are shut?" "Yes, master. People are talking of nothing else." "I have news that there will be trouble tonight, so we must set to work at once to place the chests in safety. First let them clear out the wood cellar." This was done in a few minutes by the 7 men. Then Jacques told the others to go back into the shop and pack up all the silver goods in the chests. As soon as they were gone Jacques looked inquiringly at his master, who nodded. Then he touched a brick in the wall some 7 feet above the floor. It sprung back. "Will you lift me up?" the man asked Guy. The lad did as he was asked, and the man thrust his arm into the orifice. A moment later he asked Guy to set him down. "Go to the doorway," he said, and hurried across to where Maître Leroux was standing. Then, kneeling down, he pushed his hand under the sill of the doorway and then stood up. "Do you hear that?" the silversmith said. "I hear a dull rumbling somewhere," Guy replied. As he spoke he saw half the floor, which was apparently of solid flags, begin to rise. "This was done in my father's time," Maître Leroux said, "and it was made for him by Maître Lepelletier's father with the aid of 2 or 3 good smiths, who put the machinery together at his house and were in ignorance where it was intended to be placed." The trapdoor was now raised, and Guy, to his astonishment, saw a stream of running water 3 feet below the opening. "Whence comes this?" he asked in astonishment. "No wonder you are surprised," the silversmith said. "It was a piece of rare good luck that my father hit upon it. A map that he had showed him that in the old days, before there were any houses on this side of the river, a narrow branch left the stream some 100 yards above the position of this house, made a circuit, and came into it again as much below. He inquired among some old men, and learned that they had heard their grandfathers say that they knew that at some time or other this stream had been built over when Paris began to grow in this direction. After he had contrived this apparatus that you see, which is worked by a heavy counterpoise in the wall, he began to dig, and a foot below the surface came upon an arch of brickwork, so my father concluded that his house was exactly over the old stream. On breaking through the crown he discovered, as you see, that the water still flowed through this tunnel, which is some 3½ yards wide and 8 feet deep. My men, all of whom are trusty fellows, know of the existence of this hiding place, but Jacques is the only one besides myself who knows the secret of the opening. Now, Jacques, fetch the chests along as fast as they are ready." The chests were soon brought up, and one by one lowered. Chains were attached from the handle of each to that of the one that followed. They were almost the weight of the water, and sank until within an inch or two of the surface. Each was floated down as it was lowered, until 20 great chests had been taken down. Then one more heavy and ponderous than the rest was attached to the train, and a sloping board being placed from the cellar floor to the bottom of the stream, the case was allowed to slide down this until it rested on the bottom, several feet beyond the trapdoor. "There, you see," the silversmith said. "Even if they discovered the trapdoor and broke up the floor with sledgehammers, which would be no easy matter, and probed the stream with lances, they would find nothing. As you saw, there is a chain to the end of the last box, which is, as it were, an anchor to the rest. This chain Jacques will now attach to a strong wire, and fasten that to a ring below the water's edge, and a foot beyond the trapdoor, so that when danger is past we shall haul up the chain and recover the cases one by one in the order in which they had been sent down." As soon as Jacques had fastened the wire to the ring, he touched another heavy spring under the sill, then pulled hard on the trapdoor. This gradually began to sink, and in a minute was in place again. At the same time the brick that had been pushed in above came out into its place again. Dust was then swept into the crack at the edge of the trapdoor, and no one who had not seen the ladder raised would have dreamt of its existence. Chapter 13. The Masters of Paris. The trapdoor closed, the firewood was carried back again, and Guy went upstairs, where he found that Dame Margaret, Agnes, and Charlie had already put on their disguises. Their faces had been slightly darkened. Agnes had coiled her hair up under a cap, while Dame Margaret's would be completely hidden under the hood. She and Charlie could have passed very well even in daylight, but Agnes by no means looked her character. Her mother had darkened the skin at the back of her neck as well as on her face, but the girl's evident discomfort and shyness were so unboylike that they would at once be noticed. Guy fetched a short cloak reaching only to his hips from his room and brought it in to her. "I think that you will be more comfortable in this," he said. "Yes, indeed," she exclaimed gratefully as she put it over her shoulders. "I shall not mind now." It reached nearly down to her knees, and the high collar concealed the back of her head effectually. "I did not expect that you would be ready so soon," he said, turning to Dame Margaret. "It will not be dark for 2 hours yet." "No, but I thought it much better to be prepared to leave at any moment. Mistress Leroux has shown me a door opening from the yard into a very narrow lane behind. She says that it has not been used for years, but she has been down herself with the key and has unlocked it, so that we have only to let a bar down to open it, and if there should be an attack on the front of the house we can escape that way." "It would be best to leave that way in any case," Guy said, "and thereby you will avoid observation by anyone who may be watching. It is evident that the citizens of this quarter are very anxious and alarmed. Looking from the window I have seen them standing in groups, or going in and out of each other's houses. They cannot know what is going to take place, but the closing of the gates by the butchers without any warrant has of course shown them that something serious is going to occur." "You had better disguise yourself at once, Guy." "I will do so, mistress, but I do not think that there is any fear of disturbance until evening. Men who are engaged in work that may some day bring punishment upon those concerned in it prefer darkness. Besides, at that time all careful men will be in their houses, and will not dare to come out whatever sounds they may hear." Maître Leroux presently came up. "I have been out and trying to gather news. There are all sorts of rumours abroad, but none know aught with certainty. They say that the butchers have stationed guards at the ends of all the streets leading to the market quarter, and they allow none to pass in or out. It is reported that Aquitaine has sent an officer to the butchers to demand under what warrant they have closed the gates of the city, and to order them to open them forthwith, and to withdraw the men stationed there. It is said that their answer was that they had acted for the good of the state and for the safety of the king's person, and that they would presently call upon his highness and explain matters to him. This may be true or merely rumour, but it is generally believed. Everyone is talking of the fight at the gate of Saint Denis. Some say that it was forced open by order of the Duke of Burgundy, while others affirm that Caboche and that mischievous varlet John de Troyes went in great haste to the duke when they received the news, that he declared to them that he knew nothing whatsoever of the affair, and that whatever was done was certainly done without his orders. Most of my men have already left. It were better that they should go off one by one than that they should move off together. 'Tis well that my wife bethought her of that back entrance. It's never been used in my time, for the lane is but 3 feet wide, and the houses beyond are of no very good repute. I talked at one time of having it bricked up, and only refrained from doing so from the thought that it might be useful on some such occasion as this." "Your esquire has not gone out, I suppose, Lady Margaret?" "No, he is putting on his disguise, or at least he is colouring his hair and face, and so altering himself that he would not be known, but he will not put on his full disguise until later." Guy soon came out. He was in his ordinary garments, but having put on his best suit beneath them, he looked broader and bulkier than usual, while his blackened hair and darkened face had made so great a change in his appearance that both Agnes and her mother agreed that they would not have known him. "You could certainly go anywhere, Guy, and mix with any crowd, and no one would have a suspicion that you were the young Englishman of whom the whole town was searching." Half an hour before it became dark, Guy went down to the front door. Standing there listening attentively, he presently heard 3 little knocks given, as by a hand on the door. He opened it a little. Katarina slipped in, and he again fastened the door and put up the bar. "I brought the disguises early," she said, "as I thought they might be required in haste, but my father has learned that it will be 8 o'clock before the butchers sally out with their forces from the markets." "All here are ready and prepared to start at a moment's notice, and have arranged to go out by a door behind that leads into a narrow lane." "That is good," the girl said. "I have been near for the last half hour, and have noticed 2 or 3 men hanging about, and by their furtive glances in the direction of the house I have no doubt that they are watching it. I had to wait until there happened to be a group of people before the door, and then slipped in behind them and got in, without, I am sure, their having seen me. I have been uneasy as to how we should leave, for if they saw a group of or a party of 3 or 4 issuing out together, one of them would be sure to follow." They were now upstairs. The fact that Agnes was in the same disguise as herself freed Katarina from the shamefacedness that she would otherwise have felt at being seen by Dame Margaret in her present attire. "You are well disguised," Dame Margaret said as she entered. "I no longer wonder that you are able to go about as a boy without suspicion. You look one to the life, while Agnes is so awkward that she would be detected in a moment." "She has not had the practice that I have had," Katarina said with a laugh. "The awkwardness will soon wear off if she has to dress like this for a short time. As for me, I have learnt all a boy's tricks and ways. I can whistle and shout with any of them, can quarrel and bluster, be saucy on occasion, and have only once been in trouble." "Oh, how was that, Katarina?" "A boy who was a bit taller than I ran against me and declared that it was my fault, and gave me a cuff on the head. A hit on the head! I might have run away, and of course I ought to have done so, but I was angry, for he really hurt me, so I had to do what any boy would have done, and I flew at him so fiercely, and cuffed and scratched and kicked so savagely, that at last he turned and ran. He had hit me too, but I did not feel it at the time, and the next morning I was all sorts of colours round the eyes. Father was very angry, but when I asked what else he would have done if he had been cuffed, he could not tell me. I had a very important message to carry that morning for him. At first he said I could not go out in that state, but as I told him, I'd never looked so much like a boy before." All were glad when it became dark enough for them to make a start. The men and maids had all been sent away, and none remained save Maître Leroux and his wife. They were not in any disguise, but were wrapped up in cloaks, and in the badly lighted streets could pass unrecognized. "Do you go out first, Master Aylmer," the silversmith said. "I have no fear of anyone watching behind, for it is not likely that any of them know of this entrance to my house. Still, it is as well to make certain. When you get out of the lane you had best stay there until the others have passed on, then you can follow them. We will wait for a few minutes after they have gone, and lock the door behind us. You have not forgotten where you are to find us?" "No, I have the name and house right. Shall I ask for you as Maître Leroux?" "Oh, I have not thought of that. No, it would be better perhaps to ask for Philip Sampson. It were just as well that none should know my name there except Le Pelletier and his wife." As arranged, Guy went out first. There was still light enough for him to make his way along the narrow lane without falling over piles of dirt and rubbish that at some points almost blocked the lane. The street into which it opened was also a very narrow one, and no one was about. In a minute Dame Margaret, walking with Katarina, and with Agnes close behind, holding Charlie's hand, passed him. "It's all quite clear," he said. Keeping some 15 yards behind, he followed them until they entered a broader street. There were a good many people about here. The nearest way would have been to have crossed the road and passed by another small street facing that from which they had come, but somewhat to his surprise they turned and went along the broader street. He soon acknowledged to himself that this was the wiser course, for there were so many people about that their passage would be unnoticed, while in the narrow lanes some rough fellow might have accosted them. Keeping always in frequented streets, they made a long detour before they reached that in which the Count resided, and it was with a feeling of great relief that Guy saw them enter the house. He himself, as arranged, did not approach it for another quarter of an hour. Then he went and knocked on the door with his hand, which was at once opened by Katarina. "All is well," she said. "Your lady is in the room where you first waited. My father is with her." As Guy entered, the Count was just saying, "Yes, it would certainly be best, madam, that your daughter should continue at present in that disguise. In the first place, she will get accustomed to it, and should she have occasion to move again, she would be able to do so without attracting notice. In the second place, it would be desirable that even accidentally no one should know that there is a young lady of her age here. I have no visitors except on business, but possibly either she or your boy might come out on the stairs when one is going up or down. It would be unfortunate that he should see them at all, but if it were but a boy he caught sight of, he would not at any rate associate them with your party. These precautions may seem to you absurd, but it is often by little accidents that things are discovered, when, as it seemed, everything had been provided against." "I shall not mind," Agnes said. "When I first went out it seemed dreadful, but when I found that nobody noticed me I began to be accustomed to it, and as your daughter is dressed as a boy too, I shall not mind it." "I shall not like being dressed as a girl," Charlie said sturdily. The Count smiled. "Well, we will see what we can do in your case. Anyway, you must keep on that dress for a day or two at least. And now, Guy, about yourself. I have arranged for you to lodge with a man who gets news for me. It's in the butcher's quarter, which is the last place where anyone would think of looking for you. Besides, there you will see all that is going on. I have 2 other disguises in addition to that I sent you. One is that of a young butcher, another is that of one of the lads who lives in misery, who sleep at the market where they can earn a few sous by doing odd jobs, and beg or steal when they can do nothing else. I hear that you have also arranged for a shelter in the quarter between the walls. That too may be very useful, and it will be well for you to go thither tomorrow and arrange so that you can have a place to go to when you choose. It will doubtless be much more pleasant for you there than in the market quarter. Lastly, I have got you a white hood, which you may find to be most useful of all." Guy looked surprised. "Henceforth," the Count went on, "white is to be the butcher's colour. All who march this evening are to be so clad, and as soon as it is known tomorrow you will find three quarters of the people wearing it, for not to do so will be taken as a sign of hostility to their faction. They will have started by this time, and if it pleases you to put on the butcher's dress and the white hood over, you can now mingle in safety with them and see all that is done. Then when they return to their quarter you can go with them. The house to which you are to go is the third on the left hand side of the Rue des Couteaux. My man lodges at the top of the house, the room to the left when you mount the stair. His name is Simon Bouclier. The lane is at the back of the butcher's market. The man has no idea who you are. I have simply told him that I will send a young man to help gather news for me of what is going on, that you would work separately, but that he was to do all in his power to aid you, and that at any time, if he wanted to send a message to me and could not himself come, he was to entrust the message to you, and similarly he was to bring any message that you might want to send to the spot where he meets my messenger. The man works for one of the Thiberts. He does not know who I am, but I think he believes me to be an agent of the Burgundies, and that I collect the information so that he may be privately informed of what is doing. I have encouraged that idea because it is more likely to keep him truthful to me, since he would think that were he to play me false the Duke would see that some harm or other befell him. Therefore it is as well that you should drop a word as if by accident that will confirm that notion, and will lead him to believe that you too are working under the orders of the Duke. This will lull any suspicion that he might feel on seeing, as he must do, that you live in a position far higher than would appear from your garb. And now, if you would see tonight's doings, you had best put on that disguise and the white hood, and be off without delay. You will find the things in the room above." In a few minutes Guy was ready to start. He could not help looking with disfavour at the greasy and stained garments, and he put them on with an expression of strong disgust. The two suits that he had taken off he made up into a bundle, placed the disguise he had brought with him with them, putting up separately that of which the Count had spoken, and which was so ragged and dirty that he inwardly hoped that he might never be obliged to assume it. Then he went downstairs again. He had strapped round his waist a heavy sword placed beside the clothes, and carried in his hand a short pike. Dame Margaret smiled when he entered, and Katarina laughed out loud at the expression of his face. "Truly, Guy," Dame Margaret said, "you might go anywhere in that garb without a soul suspecting you. This journey with me is leading you into strange disguises and adventures, which will give you much matter for talk when we are safely back at Summerley." "I have left my other disguises above," Guy said to the Count. "The decent one of an apprentice I have placed with my own clothes, and will take them with me to any lodging that I may get among the carpenters, but that beggar suit I will take to Simon Bouclier's the first time I can. I suppose you would not wish me to come here during the day?" "No, unless it is very important, and to that end I think you had better carry the apprentice's disguise also to your lodging in the market. You would not gain favour among the carpenters were you to go among them in the dress you now wear, and your calling upon me here in your apprentice's dress would excite no attention. Therefore, if you have need to come here during the day, you had best come as an apprentice." Guy now went down into the street through which the butcher's force would pass. In a short time he heard a deep dull sound, and soon they came along, a host of armed men. He fell in unnoticed near the head of the column. Soon after he had joined them they halted, and 3 or 4 knights came up and entered into the conversation with their leaders. Guy recognized among them Sir Robert de Mailly, Sir Charles de Lens, and several others of the household of the Duke of Burgundy. These talked for some time with the Sieur de Jacqueville, governor of Paris, who had joined the butcher's faction and was now riding at the head of the column, whereupon the force went no further, but turned and retraced its steps. Guy wondered greatly where the butchers could be going, but soon found they were making for the Bastille. After much parley between de Jacqueville and the governor, the latter consented, on the order of the Duke of Burgundy's friends, to hand over to them Sir Peter des Essars and his brother Sir Anthony, who were both supporters of the Orleanists, and had come to Paris secretly, and had by the orders of the Duke of Aquitaine been admitted as guests to the Bastille. These two gentlemen, the Essars, were marched back to the Louvre, the gates of which were opened by the orders of Burgundy's friends, and the 2 knights were thrown into the prison of the palace. On the way back the houses of a very rich upholsterer and of a cannon founder with great repute, both of whom had withstood the butchers, were broken into and their owners both murdered. After this the mob marched to the house of Maître Leroux. No reply being given to their summons to open, an attack was made upon the door. While they were engaged in doing this, screens of wattles covered with 2 or 3 thicknesses of hides were placed so as to shelter the assailants from the arrows that had proved so deadly on the occasion of their last attack. It was thus evident that the outrage was a planned one. Guy looked on with some amusement until the door gave way under the action of some very heavy sledgehammers, wielded by a party of brawny smiths. The moment it did so the crowd made a tremendous rush. So great was the pressure that many were thrown down and trampled to death in the doorway. It was not long before several of the windows were thrown open, and voices shouted down that the house was deserted. A yell of fury burst from the crowd below, but the pressure at the door was even greater than before. The loss incurred during the first attack had caused all but the bravest and most determined to hang back somewhat. Now, however, that it seemed that the silversmith's stores could be ransacked without danger, all were anxious to have a hand in it. Presently one of the leaders appeared at a casement on the first floor and waved his arms for silence. The roar of voices ceased, and the man cried, "Citizens, 'tis of no use to press forward into the house. Not only has the traitor and those with him fled from the just vengeance of the people, but he has taken away with him the whole of his silverware." A yell of disappointment and rage rose, then, as it ceased for a moment, a voice shouted out, "They are trying to cheat us, my friends. Those who got in first have divided up the spoil and wish us to have no share of it." This caused a fresh outburst of commotion. At a signal from the leader above, a number of well armed men, who were evidently a sort of bodyguard, pressed forward to the door and drove back the crowd with blows from the staves of their pikes. Presently those who had entered began to pour out, and in a quarter of an hour the house was cleared. As soon as it was so, the windows were lit up by a lurid light which showed that it had been fired on each floor, and the flames very soon burst out through the casements. Satisfied with having done this, the butchers returned to their quarter, and Guy mounted to the chamber of Simon Bouclier. The man had evidently just returned, as he too wore a white hood. He had been carrying a torch in the procession, and this was stuck into a ring in the wall. "Well, comrade," he said as Guy entered, "I suppose you are the man I was told would come here tonight." "I am so," Guy said. "I should have been here before, but I joined the procession as I guessed that you would be there also." "Yes," the man said, "I thought I should not have gone had I not thought that more would come of it. What have we done? Captured 2 knights and killed 2 bourgeois. Pooh! It did not need 5,000 men for that." "No, but it was just as important as if we had killed 100. "How so?" he asked. "Because it has shown the Armagnacs that Paris and Burgundy are as united as ever, and that they will stand no intrigues by the court party." "This is true. We are all sound here. There were but 5,000 out tonight, because that was enough for the work, but there will be 4 times as many next time we go to the Louvre. Tomorrow morning, you know, we are going to pay a visit to the Duke of Aquitaine at his hotel, to teach that young man that he has to do as we in Burgundy order him, or that it will be the worse for him." "So I understand," Guy said carelessly. "As long as all hold together in this quarter everything will go right. My duty principally is to find out if there are any signs of wavering. There are no signs, of course, among the butchers, but some of the others are thought to be but half-hearted." "The butchers and the skinners are all right, never fear," the man said, "and if there are others in the quarter who may not be quite so hot in the matter as we are, they know better than to open their mouths. Of course, in the other quarters there may be a strong party who would thwart us. The smiths and the carpenters and the masons are ever jealous of us of the markets, but they have no leaders, and hold not together as we do. Besides, they know that we have Burgundy with us, so whatever they think they are not likely to say much, for it came to a battle we could sweep them out of the city." Yes, I know that there is no fear of that. The great thing is to make sure that some of those who seem to be hottest in the matter are not taking money from the other party. There are 1 or 2 I am specially to observe." "I understand you, comrade. I myself have never had much confidence in Jean de Troyes nor his medical students. He is good at talking, no one will deny that, but for myself I would rather that we kept among ourselves and had nothing to do with such cattle, who have no interest in the privileges of the guilds, and who take part with us no one knows why. But I am sleepy. That bundle of fresh rushes in the corner is yours. I got them in the Haymarket today when I heard you were coming.
You can keep beside me tomorrow morning, and I will get you a good place in the ranks. From whence shall I say that you come, as many will ask the question, seeing that your face is strange?" "You can say I am from Nancy." "Yes, that will be good enough. That is the right quarter of France for a man to have come from just at present." Guy was thoroughly fatigued with the long excitement of the day. At 11 in the morning everything had been going on as usual. Now Dame Margaret and the two children were in hiding, her 4 men at arms fugitives, and Paris was virtually in a state of insurrection against the royal authority, stirred up thereto by the Duke of Burgundy, who had thus openly leagued himself with the scum of Paris. That what he had seen that evening was but the beginning of a series of crimes Guy could not doubt, and although this man had expressed his confidence in the power of the marketmen to sweep the craftsmen out of Paris, he felt sure, from what he had heard, that this could not be done until a fierce and doubtful battle had been fought in the streets. At 8 next morning he went out with his companion. "It is well not to go into a place where we shall meet many till your face is better known," the latter said, and he led the way to a small trattoir a quarter of a mile away. Here they sat down and breakfasted. Then they returned to the market where the White Hoods were mustering. Simon, who was evidently well known to most of the butchers, took his place near the head of the column, and at 9 o'clock it got into motion. When it issued from its own quarters it was evident that its approach excited general apprehension. The streets were deserted as it passed along. None of the casements were opened, and although the traders dared not put up their shutters, none of them appeared at the doors, where their apprentices and workmen gathered to look at the procession. Passing along steadily and in good order, and headed as before by the knights of the Duke of Burgundy's household, they drew up before the palace of the Duke of Aquitaine. Caboche, Jean de Troyes, and one of the butchers entered the house. The guards, having no orders, and seeing how strong was the force that was at their back, did not venture to oppose their entrance, and they pushed on into the private apartments of the duke, and informed him that they, on behalf of the good town of Paris, and for the welfare of his father and himself, required the delivery to them of certain traitors now in the hotel. The duke, furious at their insolence, told them that such affairs were not their business, and that there were no traitors in the hotel. In the meantime many of the White Hoods had followed their leaders, Simon and Guy entering with them. They scattered through the apartments and seized the duke's chancellor, the Duke of Bar, a cousin of the king, and 12 other knights and gentlemen, some of whom were in the apartment of the Duke of Aquitaine himself. While this was going on, the Dukes of Burgundy and Lorraine arrived, and Aquitaine, turning to the former angrily, said, "Father-in-law, this insurrection has been caused by your advice. Those of your household are the leaders of it. You shall some day repent of this. The state shall not be always governed according to your will and pleasure." However, in spite of this indignation and remonstrance, the 12 gentlemen were carried away and confined in different prisons, and presently discovering the king's secretary, they killed him and threw the body into the river. They compelled the Duke of Aquitaine himself to leave his palace, and with the king his father to take up his abode in the Hotel de St. Pol. Placing a strong guard round it, so as to prevent them from leaving Paris, the mob then compelled all the nobles and even the prelates they met to put on white hoods, and their leaders sent off letters to the chief towns in France to inform them that what they had done was for the welfare of the king and kingdom, and requiring them to give aid should there be any necessity for it. They then published an edict in the name of the king, ordering that it should be proclaimed in every bailiwick that no person, under penalty of death and confiscation of goods, should obey any summons from their superior lord to take up arms or to trouble the kingdom. The mad king was made to sign this after the Dukes of Aquitaine, Berry, and Lorraine, and other nobles of the council, had put their names to it. At 9 o'clock that evening Guy went to the square before Notre Dame. Here many groups of people were talking over the events of the day. Guy had, as soon as he left the market quarter, taken off his white hood, and before starting he put on his dress as an apprentice. There was no doubt that the opinion of the great majority of those in the square was hostile to the authors of the events of the day, and that the consternation among the citizens was very great. After thus forcing the great nobles to obey their will and outraging the palace of the Duke of Aquitaine, there was no saying to what length they would go, and fears were expressed that ere long they might sack the whole of the better quarters of Paris. It was so evident, however, that they had the support of the Duke of Burgundy, that no one saw any way out of their trouble, and that nothing but the arrival of a powerful army of Orleanists could relieve them from their peril. As Guy had no real expectation of seeing any of his followers, although the gates had been opened that afternoon after the seizure of the knights, he attended more to the conversations going on about him than to the matter on which he had come. Presently, however, he saw a rough-looking fellow watching him attentively. He walked close to him, but not recognizing him would have passed on, had not the man taken a step forward and said in a low voice, "Villeroy." "Is it you, Robert? In faith, I did not recognize you in that attire." "And I was not sure that it was you, Master Guy. I should certainly not have known you by your face. Your figure and walk when a short distance away attracted my attention, and knowing your disguise was that of an apprentice, I made sure it was you. Then as you came closer I doubted, and though I ventured upon saying the name of our lord, I scarce thought that you would reply." "Where are the others, Robert?" "They are walking about separately, seeking for you. We are to meet on the steps of the cathedral at 9:30. "And what has become of Tom?" The man laughed. "If you will come along this way, master, you will see." They went to a quiet corner of the square. As they approached it they heard angry voices, and standing under a lamp, Guy saw a tall man of wild and unkempt appearance, with black hair and a begrimed face, and a basket of vegetables strapped to his shoulders, threatening angrily with a staff 3 or 4 gamins who were making fun of him. He spoke in a wild, incoherent way, and seemed to be half-witted. "What are you worrying this poor fellow for?" Robert said angrily to the boys. "If you do not be off, and that quickly, I will lay my cudgel about your shoulders." This threat was much more efficacious than those of the half-witted man had been, and the boys at once took to their heels. The tall man shuffled towards the newcomers. "Is it really you, Tom?" Guy said in a low tone. "It's me, sure enough, Master Guy. I should not know myself, and am not surprised that you do not know me. In faith, my back aches with walking with a stoop, and my legs with shuffling along as if I had scarce the use of them, instead of stepping out manfully. Is all well? We have heard of strange doings that the butchers have with the countenance of Burgundy, bearded the Duke of Aquitaine, and even carried off some of his friends from before his face, also that the houses of 3 of those who had withstood them had been burned, among them that of Maître Leroux, also that 2 traders had been killed, though which 2 they were we have not been able to learn." "All is well, Tom. Our lady and her children were safely bestowed, as was also the silversmith and his wife." "I am right glad of that. They were a worthy couple. And so is his house burned and sacked?" "Burned, but not sacked, Tom, for he had, before they came, stowed away in a hiding place where they could not be found all those chests of his, and not a single piece of silver fell into the hands of the butchers." "Oh, that was well done," the archer said, rubbing his hands. "I should like to have seen the dogs' faces when they burst in and found nothing. And my bow, Master Guy?" "I fear that the flames will not have spared it. I went past the house today, and naught but the bare walls are standing." At this moment the bell of the cathedral struck the half hour, and Robert Picard said, "Will you stay here, Master Guy? I must go and meet the others, and forthwith bring them here to you." Chapter 14. Planning Massacre. In a short time Robert Picard returned with his 2 companions, and leaving the square they all went along the quays to a quiet spot. "We cannot be overheard here," Guy said. "And now, in the first place, let me know how you have fared. I knew that you had got safely away, for I was near the gate of St. Denis when the Burgundians fought their way out, and I saw you follow." "I had no difficulty," Robert Picard said. "We went into the wood, and thence I went across to St. Cloud and bought these garments that you see us in, and we hid away our steel caps and harness in some bushes in the heart of the wood, where they are not likely to be found. Then, after a long talk with Tom, we agreed that he had best go as a half-witted man with a basket of vegetables for sale, and I went into St. Cloud again, dressed as I now am, and found a little shop where they sold rags and old garments, and got his outfit for a couple of francs, and dear at that. We thought in that way he would not have to say much, and that any confusion of speech would be set down to the fact that his brain was weak. Hearing that the gates were open this afternoon, we came in just before they were closed for the night. We got a room in a lane which honest folk would not care to pass through even in daylight. 'Tis a vile hole, but consorts well with our appearance." "I will try and find you a better place tomorrow, Robert. I am going to see the people with whom Maître Leroux is in hiding. I hear that they have no sympathy with these butchers, and when I tell them that you are stout fellows and good fighters, methinks they will find quarters for you, and you may be able to put on safer disguises than those you wear at present, except that of Tom's, which I think we cannot better. Besides, he can lie there quietly, and need not, except when he chooses, sally out. I myself am lodging at present among the butchers. I hear that Caboche and the Legoix are furious at our having slipped through their fingers, and they declare that, as we cannot have escaped from Paris, they will lay hands on us very, very soon." "I should like to lay hands on a few of them myself, Master Guy," Tom said earnestly. "Stay out in that wood there with a quarterstaff, and to deal with 4 of them at a time. They have burnt my bow, and I shall not get even with them till I have cracked fully a dozen of their skulls." "I shall be likely to be near you in the quarter where I hope to get you lodging, Tom, for I too am going to have a room there, though I shall generally live where I am now, as I can there obtain news of all that is going on, and might be able to warn our lady in time if they should get any news that may set them on her track. Heard you aught at St. Cloud of any Orleanist gathering?" "I heard a good deal of talk about it, but naught for certain; but methinks that ere long they will be stirring again. The news that I have heard of the insolence of the mob here to the Duke of Aquitaine, and of the seizure of their friends who were with them, is likely to set them on fire, for they will see that all the promises made by Burgundy meant nothing, and that with the aid of the Parisians he is determined to exercise all authority in the state, and to hold Aquitaine as well as the king in his hands." The next morning Guy went to the house of Maître de la Peletier and inquired for Philip Sampson. Maître Leroux was in. "I have spoken to my friend about you," he said, after they had talked over the events of the last 2 days, "and he has arranged for a room for you in a house 3 doors away, and I have no doubt that your 4 men can be lodged there also, for 'tis a large house, and it is let out for the most part, as he told me, to journeyman carpenters. But since the troubles began there has been little building, and men who can find no work here have moved away to seek for it in places less afflicted by these troubles. That is one of the reasons why the carpenters have not made a firmer stand against the butchers. I will ask him to come up here. You already know him, as you have spoken with him several times when he was looking after his men putting up the new doors." The master carpenter soon came in. "I will gladly get a lodging for your men," he said, when Guy had explained the matter for him. "We may come to blows with these market people, and 4 stout fellows are not to be despised. There will be a meeting of the council of our guild this afternoon, and on my recommendation they will give me the necessary documents, saying that the men, you can give me their names, have received permission to work as carpenters in Paris. They can then put on dresses suitable for craftsmen, and the papers will suffice to satisfy anyone who may inquire as to their business. I think that your tall archer may safely lay aside the disguise you say he has assumed. It might be likely to get him into trouble. The change in the colour of the hair and the darkening of his eyebrows should be quite sufficient disguise, and if he is always when abroad with one of his comrades, he has but to keep his mouth shut, and if questioned, the man with him can say that he is dumb." "That would be excellent," Guy said, "and I am greatly obliged to you. Doubtless, too, they will soon make acquaintance with some of the other workmen, and by mixing with these there will be less suspicion excited than if they always went about together. I will tell my foreman to present them to the men who work for me, and they will soon get known in the quarter. 5 or 6 of my men lodge in the house where I took the room for you. It might be useful, too, were I to give you a paper of apprenticeship, and if you were similarly introduced. In that case it might be convenient to exchange the small room that I have taken for you for a larger one, as an apprentice you would ordinarily lodge with your master, and if you did not, you would scarce have a room to yourself, but were you to lodge with your 4 men it would seem natural enough." "That would be a capital plan, Maître Le Pelletier." "You see, in that way, too," the carpenter went on, "you would only have to place a plank on your shoulder and then go where you will without exciting the least attention. I will furnish you with a list of the houses where I have men at work, and this again would be an assistance to you. It is my foreman who took the lodging for you. I am expecting him here shortly for orders, and he shall go round with you. As you say that your fellows are dressed at present in rough fashion, it will be as well that they should provide themselves with their new disguises before they come here, as, if they were seen in their present guise, it would prejudice them with the others in the house, for craftsmen look down greatly upon the rough element of the street." "They shall do so," Guy said, "and I will come with them myself this evening." Guy presently went in with the foreman and arranged for a large attic with a dormer window at the top of the house. At midday he met Robert Picard and told him the arrangements that had been made, supplying him with money for the purchase of the 4 dresses. "As soon as it becomes dark," Guy said, "you had best go to some quiet spot and change them. Bring the clothes you now have on in a bundle, for they may yet prove useful, and meet me at 8 o'clock at the corner of the Rue des Fosses." Guy then went to the Italians and told Dame Margaret of the arrangements he had made. "Since you have managed it so well, Guy, I am glad to hear that the men are all back in Paris. I before wished that they should make straight for Villeroy, but since they are so satisfactorily bestowed, it were best perhaps that they should be within reach. Long Tom is the only one I shall feel anxious about, for of course he is less easy to disguise than the others." "He has plenty of shrewdness, my lady, and will, I have no doubt, play his part well. I know that I myself feel very glad that there are 4 true men upon whom we can rely if any difficulty should arise." "Some evening, mother," Agnes said, "when I have grown more accustomed to the boy's dress, I will go with Katarina to this house, so that I can carry a message there, should she happen to be away when there is need for sending one." Lady Margaret hesitated, but Guy said, "By your leave, my lady, I think that the idea is a very good one, saving that I myself will escort the 2 ladies there as soon as Mistress Agnes feels confident enough to go." "In that case I should have no objection, Guy. Under your charge I have no doubt Agnes would be perfectly safe, but I could hardly bring myself to let her go without escort in so wild a city as this is at present." The Italian and his daughter presently joined them, and heard with satisfaction where Guy and the 4 men had obtained a safe lodging. "Still," the count said, "I should advise you sometimes to sleep at your lodging by the marketplace. Simon is not the sort of companion you would choose. I have only seen him once, and I was then so disguised that he would not recognize me again, for none of those with whom I have dealings know who I am or where I live. But that once was sufficient to show me that the fellow might be trusted to serve me well as long as he was paid well, especially as believed that I was an agent of the duke's. Still, he is a rough and very unsavoury rascal, and had I been able to think at the moment of anywhere else where you could for the time safely shelter, I should not have placed you with him." "Oh, I don't mind," Guy said, "and at any rate with him I have opportunities of seeing what is going on, as, for example, when they insulted the Duke of Aquitaine, and it is certainly well to be able to learn what the intentions of the fellows are. As an Englishman I care naught for one party or the other, but as one of gentle blood it fills me with anger and disgust to see this rabble of butchers and skinners lording it over nobles, and dragging knights and gentlemen away to prison, and if it were in my power I would gladly upset their design, were it not that I know that for my lady's sake it were well to hold myself altogether aloof from meddling in it." "You are right," the Italian count said gravely. "I myself am careful not to meddle in any way with these affairs. I try to learn what is doing, because such knowledge is useful to me and gains me credit as well as money with those who consult me, and may possibly be the means of saving their lives if they do but take my warning. Thus, having learned what was proposed to be done yesterday morning, I was able to warn a certain knight who visited me the evening before that it might cost him his life were he to remain in Paris 12 hours. He was incredulous at first, for I would give him no clue as to the nature of the danger. However, by a little trick I succeeded in impressing him sufficiently for him to resolve to leave at daybreak. This he did. At least they searched for him in vain at the Duke of Aquitaine's, and therefore I have no doubt that he took my advice, engaged a boat, and made his escape by the river. It was his first to me, and I doubt not that henceforth he will be a valuable client, and that he will bring many of his friends to me. If I mistake not, I shall have more opportunities of doing such services, and of so increasing my reputation ere long." For a time things went on quietly. Tom and his companions were on friendly terms with the other men in the house, who all believed them to be carpenters who had come to Paris in search of employment. Long Tom was supposed by them to be dumb, and never opened his lips save when alone with his companions, and seldom left the house. The room was altogether unfurnished, but furniture was regarded as by no means a necessity in those days. 5 bundles of rushes formed their beds, and Guy, as there was little to learn in the markets, generally slept there. An earthenware pan in which burned a charcoal fire over which they did what cooking was necessary, a rough gridiron, and a cooking pot were the only purchases that it was necessary to make. Slices of bread formed their platters, and saved them all trouble in the matter of washing up. Washing was roughly performed at a well in the courtyard of the house. Things had now quieted down so much that a considerable number of great nobles resorted to Paris, for the king had now a lucid interval. Among them were the Dukes of Berri, Burgundy, and Lorraine, with Duke Louis of Bavaria, the queen's brother, with the Counts of Nevers, the Charolais, the St. Pol, the Constable of France, and many other great lords and prelates. The queen was also with her husband. "There will shortly be trouble again," the Italian said one day to Guy. "Simon told my daughter yesterday evening that the butchers were only biding their time to get as many fish into their net as possible, and that when they would draw it they would obtain a great haul. You have not been down there for some time.
it were best that you put on your butcher's garb again, and endeavour to find out what is intended." "I was expecting you," Simon said when that evening Guy entered his room. "There will be a meeting at midnight in the butcher's hall, and I cannot take you in with me, but I will tell you what happens." "Oh, that will do as well as if I went myself," Guy said, "though in truth I should like well to see one of these councils." "No one is admitted save those known to be, like myself, thoroughly devoted to the cause." "Oh, that I can well understand, Simon. A traitor might mar all their plans." "Some time I may take you," Simon said, "for doubtless I could smuggle you in, but tonight he hesitated, "it will be specially important, and they have to be more particular than usual as to who are admitted." Guy noticed the hesitation, and replied carelessly that one occasion would be as good as another for him, and presently lay down in his corner. He wondered to himself what the business could be that his companion was evidently anxious that he should hear nothing of. He might wish that he should alone have the merit of reporting it, or it might be something that it was deemed the Duke of Burgundy himself, the butcher's friend and ally, would not approve of. At any rate, Guy was determined, if possible, to find it all out. He therefore feigned sleep. At 11 o'clock Simon got up and went down. Guy waited for 2 or 3 minutes, and then rose and followed. As soon as he was out of the door he made direct for the hall of the Butchers' Guild. He knew that Simon was not going straight there, as the meeting was not, he said, for an hour, and that he would be stopping to drink at some cabaret with his associates. The hall was but a short distance away. When Guy approached he saw that as yet it was not lighted up. On 3 sides it was surrounded by a garden with high trees. Near the front entrance some 20 men were gathered talking together. He therefore went round to the back. Several trees grew near the wall, and the branches of one of these extended over it. With considerable difficulty Guy succeeded in climbing it, and made his way along the branch and got upon the top of the wall. This wall was about 14 feet high, and lowering himself by his arms he dropped into the garden and crossed to the building. He took off his white hood and thrust it into his doublet. The windows were 6 feet from the ground, and were, as usual at this time, closed by wooden shutters on the inside. Putting his fingers on the sill he raised himself up. There was plenty of room for him to stand, and holding on by the iron bars he took out his dagger and began to cut a hole in the shutter. The wood was old, and after half an hour's hard work he succeeded in making a hole 3 inches long and an inch wide. By the time this was finished the hall had been lighted up with torches, and men were pouring in through the doors at the other end. Across the end next to him was a platform on which was a table. For a time no one came up there, for the members as they entered gathered in groups on the floor and talked earnestly together. After a few minutes 10 men came up to the platform. By this time the body of the hall was full, and the doors at the other end were closed. A man, whom Guy recognized as Jean de Troyes, stepped forward from the others on the platform, and, standing in front of the table, addressed his comrades. "My friends," he said, "it is time that we were at work again. Paris is becoming infested by enemies of the people, and we must rid ourselves of them. The nobles are assembled for the purpose, and, as they say, of being present at the marriage of Louis of Bavaria with the widow of Peter de Navarre. But we know well enough that this is but a pretext. They have come to consult how best they can overthrow the power of our Duke of Burgundy, and suppress the liberty of this great city. The question is, are we tamely to submit to this?" A deep shout of "No" ran through the multitude. "You are right, we will not submit. Were we to do so, we know that it would cost the lives of all those who have made themselves prominent in the defence of the liberties of Paris. They might even go so far as to suppress all our privileges, and to dissolve our guilds. In this matter the Duke of Burgundy hesitates, and is not inclined to go with us to the full, but we Parisians must judge for ourselves what is necessary to be done. The Duke has furnished us with a list of 12 names. These men are all dangerous and obnoxious to the safety of Paris. But there must be a longer list. We must strike at our own enemies as well as at those of the Duke, and the council has therefore prepared a list of 60 names, which I will read to you." Then, taking out a roll of paper, he read a list of lords and gentlemen, and also, to Guy's indignation, the names of several ladies of rank. "These people," he said when he had finished, "are all obnoxious and must be cast into prison. They must be tried and condemned." Even among the greater portion of those present, the boldness of a proposal that would array so many powerful families against them created a feeling of doubt and hesitation. The bolder spirits, however, burst into loud applause, and in this the others speedily joined, none liking to appear more lukewarm than the rest. Then up rose Caboche, a big burly man with a coarse and brutal expression of face. "I say we want no trials," he cried, striking one hand on the palm of the other. "As to the number, it's well enough as a beginning, but I would it were 600 instead of 60. I would that at one blow we could destroy all the nobles who live upon the people of France. It needs but a good example to be set in Paris for all the great towns in France to follow it. Still, paltry as the number is, it will, as I said, do as a beginning. But there must be no mistake. If trials they must have, it must be by good men and true, who will know what is necessary and do it, and who will not stand upon legal tricks, but will take as evidence the fact that is known to all, that those people are dangerous to Paris, and are the enemies of the king and the Duke of Burgundy. Last time we went we marched with 5,000 men, this time we must go with 20,000. They must see what force we have at our command, and that Paris is more powerful than any lord or noble, even of the highest rank, and that our alliance must be courted and our orders obeyed. The Duke of Burgundy may pretend to frown, but at heart he will know that we are acting in his interest as well as our own, and even if we risk his displeasure, well, let us risk it. He needs us more than we need him. Do what he will, he cannot do without us. He knows well enough that the Orleanists will never either trust or forgive him, and he committed himself so far with us last time that, say what he will, none will believe that he is not with us now. For myself, I am glad that de Jacqueville and his knights will not this time as last ride at our head. 'Tis best to show them that Paris is independent even of Burgundy, and that we will what we can do." The hall rang with the loud acclamations. Then Jean de Troyes got up again. "I agree, we all agree, with every word that our good friend has spoken, and can warrant me that the judges shall be men in whom we can absolutely trust, and that those who enter the prisons will not leave them alive. The day after tomorrow, Thursday, the 11th of May, we shall hold a great assembly, of which we shall give notice to the king and the royal dukes, and shall make our proposals to the Duke of Aquitaine. Now, my friends, let each come forward with a list of the number of his friends who he will engage shall be present on Thursday." At this point Guy, seeing that the main business of the meeting had been declared, and that there now remained but to settle the details, got down from his post. With the aid of some ivy he climbed the wall and dropped down beyond it, and made his way back to his lodging. When Simon returned an hour later, Guy was apparently as fast asleep as before. When sleeping at the butcher's quarter he always rose at a very early hour, so that none who might have noticed him in his butcher's attire might see him go out in that of an apprentice, and he was obliged to walk about for some time before he could call at the count's. As soon as he thought that they would be likely to be stirring, he knocked at the door. The old woman opened it. "Is your master up yet?" he asked. She nodded, and without further question he made his way upstairs to the Italian's chamber. "You are early, Master Aylmer," the latter said in surprise as he entered. "Have you news of importance?" "I have indeed, Count," and he at once related all that he had heard through the hole in the shutter. "The insolence of these people surpasses all bounds," the count said angrily as he walked up and down the room. "Were there any force in the town that could resist them, I would warn the Duke of Aquitaine what was intended, but as it is, nothing would be gained by it. You can only remember the 8 or 10 names which you have given me. That is all. They were names that I was familiar with, while the others were strange to me. 2 or 3 of them I can at least say from the grasp of these rascals, but I will take them all down on my tablets. What need was there for you," he went on after he had done this, "to run such risk as you did, for you would assuredly have been killed without mercy had they caught you spying upon them, when Simon, who you say was present, could have sent me full particulars of all that passed?" Guy stated his reasons for fancying that upon this occasion Simon did not intend to send a full account. "I thought so before I started," Guy said, "but I was well assured of it when I heard that, although Burgundy had given the names of 12 persons whom he desired to be arrested, he would go no further in the matter, and that he had no knowledge of their further pretensions. It seems to me, Count, that believing as he does that you are an agent of the duke's, he was unwilling to say anything about this matter, as Burgundy might thwart the intentions of the butchers. The man is heart and soul with them, and though he is willing to sell you information that can do no harm to their plans, he will say nothing that might enable Burgundy to thwart them. If I thought that Burgundy could or would do so, I would inform him as well as Aquitaine what is doing, but in the first place he has not the power, and in the second he would not have the will. What are a few score of lives to him, and those mostly of men of the Orleanist faction, in comparison with the support of Paris? I am vexed, too, at this failure of Simon, that is to say, if it be a failure. That we shall know by midday. My daughter will meet him in the Place de Grève at 11,
and we shall hear when she comes back how much she has told her. I am going after breakfast to my booth outside the walls, where you first saw me. I must send notes to the 3 gentlemen whom I know, begging them to see me there." "Can I take them for you? I have nothing to do, and shall be glad of anything to occupy me." "I shall be obliged if you will. You are sure to find them in at this hour." He sat down and wrote 3 short communications. The wording was identical, but the times fixed for the interviews were an hour apart. They ran as follows: "My Lord, consulting the stars last night, I find that danger menaces you. It may be averted if you quit Paris when you receive this, for it seems to me that it is here only that your safety is menaced. Should you wish to consult me before doing so, come, I pray, to my booth in the fair at 2, but come mounted." Instead of a signature, a cabalistic figure was drawn below it, and then the words were added, "The bearer can be trusted." The slips of parchment were then rolled up and sealed. No addresses were put on. "If they question you," the count said, "say nothing save that I told you that the matter contained in the letter was sure and certain, and that a great risk of life would assuredly be run unless my advice was taken. Deliver them into the hands of those they concern, and trust them to no others, Master Aylmer. If you cannot obtain access to them, say to the varlets that they are to inform their lords that one from the man in the Rue des Essarts desires urgently to see them, and that should be sufficient if the message is given. If they refuse to take it, then I pray you wait outside for a while on the chance of the gentleman issuing out. This, on which you see I have made 1 dot, is for the Count de Rennes, who is at present at the Hôtel de St. Pol, being in the company of the Duke of Berry. This is for Sir John Rembault, who is at the Louvre, where he is lodging with the governor, who is a relation of his. The third is for the Lord of Roubaix, who is also lodged at the Louvre." "They shall have them," Guy said, as he placed them in his doublet, "if I have to stop till midnight to get speech with them. The matter of waiting a few hours is but a trifle in comparison with the life of a man. I would that I could warn others." The Italian shook his head. "It could not be done without great danger," he said. "Were you to carry an anonymous letter to others, you might be seized and questioned. The 3 to whom you now carry notes have all reason for knowing that my predictions are not to be despised, but the others would not accept any warning from an unknown person. They might take it for a plot, and you might be interrogated and even put to torture to discover who you are and whence you obtained this information. Things must go on as they are. Assuredly this is no time for meddling in other people's affairs. We are only at the beginning of troubles yet, and know not how great they may grow. Moreover, you have no right to run a risk for strangers when your life may be of vital service to your mistress. Should you succeed in handing these 3 letters to the gentleman to whom they are written by noon, I shall be glad if you will bring the news to me at my booth, and I shall then be able to tell you how much information the butcher has sent of the proceedings last night." Guy went first to the Louvre. As many people were going in and out, no question was asked him, and on reaching the entrance he inquired of some varlets standing there for the lodgings of the Lord de Roubaix and Sir John Rembault. "I am in the service of the Lord de Roubaix. What would you with him?" "I am charged with a message for him. I was told to deliver it only to himself." "From whom do you come? I cannot disturb him with such a message from I know not who." "That is reasonable," Guy replied; "but if you tell him that I come from the man in the Rue des Essarts, I warrant that he will see me. You don't suppose that I am joking with you?" he went on, as the varlet looked at him suspiciously. "When I should like to be whipped for my pains, if you will give the message to your lord, I doubt not that he will give me audience." "Follow me," the varlet said, and led the way upstairs and through several corridors, when he motioned for him to wait, and entered a room. He returned in a minute. "My lord will see you," he said, and led the way into the room. "This is the person, my lord," he said, and then retired. The Lord of Roubaix was a tall man of some 40 years of age. Guy bowed deeply and handed to him the roll of parchment. The count broke the seal and read it, and when he had finished looked fixedly at Guy. "The writer tells me that you are to be trusted?" "I hope so, my lord." "Do you know the contents of this letter?" "I know so much, my lord, that the writer told me to assure you the matter was urgent, and that he could not be mistaken as to what was written in the letter." The count stood irresolute for a minute or two, and then he said, "Tell him that I will act upon his advice. He has before now proved to me that his warnings are not to be neglected. You seem by your attire to be an apprentice, young sir, and yet your manner is one of higher degree.
"Disguises are convenient at times like these, my lord," Guy said.
"You are right, lad." He put his hand to his pouch, but Guy drew back with a smile.
"No, my lord, had you offered me gold before you remarked that I was but playing a part, I should have taken it in order to keep up that part. As it is, I can refuse it without your considering it strange that I should do so."
The count smiled. "Whoever you are shrewd and bold, young sir. I shall doubtless see you when I return to Paris."
Guy then left and delivered the other two missives. In each case those who received them simply returned an answer that they would be at the place at the hour named, and he then went beyond the walls, observing as he passed out through the gates that a party of White Hoods had stationed themselves there. However, they interfered with no one passing in or out. On reaching the booth he informed the count of the success of his visit. "I doubt, however," he said, "whether either of the three gentlemen will be here at the time appointed, for the White Hoods are watching at the gate."
"I think they will not stop anyone today, Master Aylmer. They intend to make a great haul tomorrow, and would not wish to excite suspicion by seizing anyone today. Were it known that they had done so, many others who have reason to believe that they are obnoxious to Burgundy or to the Parisians might conceal themselves or make their escape in various disguises. I hear that a request has been made that a deputation of the citizens of Paris shall be received by the Duke of Aquitaine tomorrow morning, and that the great lords may be present to hear the request and complaints of the city."